you, Ms. Aisha Noorain Jana and Mr. Radhakrishnan. So I'll give a brief introduction of each of the panelists before we proceed with the questions. Mr. Philippe Dessoy is the general manager of one of the largest contracting companies in the world, Belgium's B6, who are involved in major projects such as Burj Khalifa. He has been in the company since 1989 and has over 30 years of experience in this field. He is the current Senior Vice President of the Confederation of International Contractors Associations, and he is also the current President-elect and will take over in November, late November this year. Welcome, Mr. Philippe. Philippe is also a good friend of mine. We discuss so many issues regularly. Datuk Matthew T. Kai Won, my immediate past president of IFOPCA. Datuk Matthew T. Kai Won is the Group Executive Director of Bina Puri Holdings since 2013. As you know, Bina Puri is one of the most successful companies in Malaysia. He's a chartered accountant himself with experience from Marsden B. Robinson Chartered Accountants, New Zealand, and PricewaterhouseCoopers. He holds a Bachelor of Commerce, Accounting and Marketing from the University of Auckland, New Zealand. He has been a member of the Malaysian Institute of Accountants, MIA, and was duly awarded the status Fellow Certified Practicing Accountant, FCPA, by CP Australia in March 2016. He's also a Certified Financial Planner, Financial Planning Association of Malaysia, a member of the Financial Planning Association of Malaysia. Maybe we should have this in Maldives, Sarwash. Right? He is the past president of the Master Builders Association of Malaysia, MBAM, and the 44th president of IFOPCA, a former board member of the Construction Industry Development of Malaysia, CIDB Malaysia, and the Construction Labour Exchange Centre Berhad, CLAB. Presently, he is the Honorary Advisor of MBAM, Honorary Treasurer General of Malaysian Steel Structural Association. Welcome, Mr. Datuk Matthew. Now this is going to be a difficult one. So now this time I'm going to do this to her, okay? What she did to me yesterday, I'm going to do to her. Noorain Aisha Jana, Aisha Noorain Jana. Noorain Jana is a certified coach, speaker, and activist. Noorain is a chartered accountant with 10 years experience as a non-executive director in the philanthropic startup and public sectors. Noorain is an EY manager on transactions and strategy, specialist in insolvency. She currently serves as the trustee of Foundation North, which is a $1 billion fund, I understand, right? For poor communities organized by the New Zealand government. She was appointed a trustee about a year back. Yes, by the Prime Minister. A philanthropic grant funder, right? She is the founder and CEO of Authenticity Aotearoa, an award-winning charity empowering women of color to express their authentic selves and working to create culturally competent and inclusive workplaces. Noorain is also the founder of Rehendi Coaching and Consulting, and she is also a trained transformational coach certified by the Coach Masters Academy. Noorain leads restructuring and liquidation engagements as a manager at the EY, and on turnaround and restructuring strategy, she is also an EY ambassador for diversity within the firm and the accountants community in Australia and New Zealand. Welcome. Mr. Radhakrishnan, my friend, imagine how senior he is. Mr. Radhakrishnan is 82 years old. You know, he doesn't look that, right? We have to get a lot of inspiration from Mr. Radhakrishnan. And he's a very big advocate of our industry, you know. I meet him regularly in meetings in India. Mr. Radhakrishnan was an active member of the Builders Association of India, particularly in southern central India since 1974. He has served as the vice president for 2 terms of Builders Association of India and was unanimously elected as the president of BAA for the years 1988-89. He has participated in 9 IFOPCA conventions. He is one of the founder council members who signed the charter of the establishment of the Indian Concrete Institute in Chennai. He has often chaired as a judge on selecting outstanding structures and outstanding contributions made by his colleagues to the construction industry. Welcome, Mr. Radhakrishnan. Welcome, all of you. Thank you for accepting my invitation to be speakers at this discussion. So my first question would be to Matthew. Combination of the pandemic, Brexit, and the Ukraine war has once again triggered debate of a non-US dollar world reserve currency. British pound doesn't appear to be a likely candidate. No euro anywhere. What do you think is the likelihood of a viable non-USD world reserve currency happening anytime in the near future? What would be the most likely candidates and why? Will the Chinese renminbi or the Russian ruble be alternatives?
Anyway, a bit pressured because we have all the VIPs and excellencies down there, and so a bit pressured. But anyway, thank you for inviting. Thank you for the invitation. I think to me, the quick and fast question is the US currency is still here to stay. We talk about the yuan, but I don't think it's coming on board anytime soon because even though you have a lot of pressures from the Western circles trying to pressure the US to liberalize, but I don't think it's coming on board anytime soon because at the end of the day, what do we want? We want stability. I think more than 80% of cross-border trades around the world are using the US currency. World reserves, 62% using the US currency. So, and the yuan I think is not even in the top 4 of I think world reserve currency. Currently, you have the pound, you have euros, you have the yen. So to me, the US, sir, is here to stay. The yuan not coming on board anytime soon. That's it.
All right. My next question goes to Nuranjana. A study published by the Sasakawa Peace Foundation reports that in the Asia-Pacific region, women make up just 4% of CEOs, 10% of CFOs, and 5% of board chairs. This is 2022. What do you think are the reasons behind such a poor performance? What can be done to improve this?
So, assalamu alaikum, Bajari Hindune, kia ora koutou, as my dad has introduced me. It wasn't an invitation so much as a bit of a nudge, and you should be on this panel, so thank you for inviting me. The Asia-Pacific region, I was really disappointed to see the statistics because New Zealand is leading in gender equity now. We just hit last month over 50% women in parliament. And given we have a strong culture of leadership in the Maldives, and I'm sure across the Asia-Pacific as well, there's strong women leaders, it's really disappointing to see those statistics. But I want to give you a couple of thoughts on why this might be historically there and what can be done to change it. And these are questions for us as leaders in the room to change as well. So in that particular study, they talk about gender pay gaps, particularly also supply of CFOs in particular, finance industry doesn't have a supply of women. There's a lot of junior women and then the pipeline breaks halfway through. So it's really about addressing the break in the pipeline of women who are going up to into senior leadership. Why are they changing? Is it because we don't have good parental policies? I also saw that it was a really high percentage of companies that don't have anti-sexual harassment policies as well. So these are the kinds of embedding policies that we can change now to ensure that that pipeline doesn't break. Addressing governance, I think we've talked a little bit about ESG and I'll keep coming back to it as I speak on this panel today, but the social and governance part of ESG tells us that we need diversity of thought as we're making decisions. So at the board level, we really need both men and women, but also diversity of ages. I'm sorry to not criticise, but I was an observer in the executive board meeting for FOPCA this week, and I noticed that there was a similarity in age range, so I'd encourage initiatives like the Emerging Young Leaders that has been put forward in making sure that there's not just a gender balance, there's an age balance, there's diversity of thought. are there voices that we need to be heard? Are there consumers' voices represented at the decision-making table? So the way that we do that is to bring along people as observers first. We also do interventions. So one of my initiatives across, this is across Australia and New Zealand, to increase the supply of diverse women in boards is to bring through a program of Board Ready, and that's an intervention that can happen for people who don't have 10 years of senior executive leadership experience, but teaching them how they can apply their perspectives and skills currently and their lived experience in the board table to make decisions. So those are some initial thoughts. This is a topic that I can talk for a really long time, but I'd encourage everyone here. There are more men in this room than women, so I'd encourage particularly the men that invite you to have a think about who are the women in your life or in your companies that you can really sponsor and support into those leadership conversations. It doesn't mean you appoint them to executive roles right now, but how can you bring them into the room and really train them and sponsor them through? Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Mr. President, can I chip in on the topic?
Yes, please.
Because we are talking about ladies' numbers, so the men should speak also. We don't want the ladies to speak.
Sure, carry on.
I think the representation, I think especially among the construction industry, numbers are still low because I think it's still a difficult industry. And as you know, ladies, they are sometimes, you know, when you move up the corporate ladder, we want continuity. I think ladies are very noble humans. You know how you don't see them. The men, you don't see them taking sabbatical 2-3 months off. You know, the years off, even with professional degrees, because they it's always, that's how human nature works. You know, you're inclined to the children, so they are willing to take sabbaticals, years, not months. You know, to take care of the family. So maybe that's why sometimes the continuity might not be there. But at the same time, I think to encourage ladies to be represented, I think we have the powers here today. Please try not to make it mandatory. In Malaysia, public listed companies in 2023 it's mandatory to have ladies on board. I think ladies want to be there on their own merit and not make it mandatory. You know, it's mandatory, then I have to plug somewhere and just fill the gap. I think you want to be there on your own because the powers are here today. So I'd like to pass the message, try not to make it mandatory. In Malaysia, we are undergoing name and shame of companies that do not have ladies representation. But to me, things will progress by itself, things will normalize by itself. Because nowadays you have world leaders who are so many ladies, so things will normalize by itself. Let's not make it mandatory, let's not pressurize. Not meant to be sexist. Thank you.
If I can say something? Yeah, I'll just respond very briefly and I can gently challenge you, Matthew. So addressing the gender pay gap and gender equity, at the current rate, it's going to take 200 years to have equity. So quotas are not the answer. I know that's not the only answer, but what quotas does is it accelerates the change and it puts an imperative on it. But it's not about just implementing a quota and leaving the companies alone to deal with that. It's also about scaffolding support and supply and making sure that we have training programs in place. We have those imperatives in place as well to make sure that companies have enough support to meet those quotas as well. But I do support quotas as a way of accelerating change. And then last small point also is around parental leave. Men and women are parents when they have families, so both people should be taking parental leave and companies should be encouraging that equity so that it's not just women taking that time off their careers. Thank you.
Thank you. Philip? Construction industry supply chain has been seriously impacted by the zero COVID policy of China. The ramification of this have been felt throughout the construction sector in the Asia-Pacific region and globally. Combined with this, the rising cost of fuel has led to a surge in cost of moving goods and materials across borders. Do you think it is reasonable to expect that the cost of production in the construction industry in this region will reach anywhere near pre-pandemic levels anytime soon? And if not, what kind of macroeconomic adjustments are required to accommodate this increase in cost of production?
Yeah, I mean, good morning first to everybody, and thank you for inviting me today. I mean, it's quite a pleasure to be here, of course. What we have seen in the past, I think, is that the price never go down where they were, especially when there is a big shock like we have seen on the last year. So the price, I feel, will go down, but I don't expect them to come back where they were in 2019. I mean, a few reasons to that. I mean, first, of course, is the disruption of the supply chain. Some factories have closed and they will not reopen. Some other, let's say, external factors happen, like we have now the war in Ukraine, which is also quite disruptive, more in Europe, but also on the world market. I mean, Ukraine was a big steel producer in the world. And then, of course, also, I mean, we said COVID is over, but we can see in China, I mean, COVID is not yet fully over, so we still have some big disruption happening from time to time. The other constraint also is that some companies, and I'm thinking mainly to the container transport, for example, has gone up. I mean, some companies took a big advantage of this disruption. And we can see many companies on the transport, on the sea transport, have, I mean, doubled their profit at the expense, of course, of a lot of producers and companies. But, I mean, again, I mean, the price of transport will come down, but not where it was before, I expect. So, like everywhere, when there is a shock in the economy, I mean, things will settle down after some time. I mean, we went through already quite a lot of disruption. The last one was 2008, of course, the financial shock. I mean, this time is supply chain, I would say, and it will take time, but we can see already, let's say, that hopefully we went through the top and things are coming back a bit, let's say, cheaper for everybody.
Thank you, Philip. To Mr. Radhakrishnan. Mr. Radhakrishnan, according to studies by Morgan Stanley, India's GDP could more than double from its current 3.5 trillion to 7.5 trillion by 2031. And by 2027, India will surpass Germany and Japan to become the third largest economy in the world. How can India's South Asian neighbors benefit from this, given the geopolitical dynamics of the region? Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Jinnah. First of all, for inviting me personally when you are...
That was a promise I made to you in India.
Pardon me?
That was a promise I made to you in India.
No, that's all.
I kept my promise.
When you have met me at Ahmedabad, you have personally invited me. Though I have forgotten, you have had remembrance and personally invited me. Thank you very much for your kind gesture. Coming back, your question about Indian GDP growth 2031. See, our vibrant Prime Minister envisaging so many ways and methods to achieve that. It is not that the Western investors being encouraged, being the score country, just like Maldives, Bangladesh, and Bhutan, and other countries. So our Indian economy growth, we expect our neighbors to participate in a big way, to contribute for the growth of Indian economy, not only by contribution for the growth of Indian economy, and we also expect our SAARC countries should improve their economy by investing in India. See, our policy, government policy, is to encourage the neighbors. Also, you know, this nation, this Maldives nation, is being supported by India in all their crises. And they are going to have the same amount of support for this island. So in this scenario, not only your participation in India, and Indian entrepreneurs also eagerly awaiting to participate in the development of this great nation of Maldives. Already some of our entrepreneurs are taking part in developing this island. See, Indian economy development means it will be helpful to the globally, not other countries' development. It is oriented for their own country. But India is not like that. India is having a basic principle of Athithi Bhavo. That means we welcome our guests. We will treat our guests as our own citizens. That is the motive of India, and we will keep it up. Indian GDP growth will be the growth of neighbor countries also.
Thank you very much.
It's my pleasure.
Dr. Matthew, the post-pandemic and the Ukraine war, how do you think that the real wages are impacted by this economic downturn that we are facing today and the relative increase in inflation in our region? Is it having a real impact on the wages? And what would our employees, and our organizations look forward in the changes in the labor market in relation to wages?
Thank you, Mr. President. I think sometimes minimum wages going up, wages going down, it might not be depending on economics at all. Sometimes it could be just the government of the day. In Malaysia, like for example, our minimum wage, 10 years ago, it was about per month. We're looking at about 190 US per month. So 10 years, for 1 decade down, now today we reached about 320 US per month. So why? Things are, I don't think inflation has gone up, cost of living has gone up, times are tough because of the COVID, and yet this year there was still another spike. So sometimes it's not due to economic factors. Maybe sometimes it could be due to political popularity. That's why wages goes up, Mr. President. I think there was a spike this year. Just to share why there was a recent spike, because I think as you all know, Malaysia we are very dependent on Indonesia, laborers from Indonesia. So I think the two countries, there was negotiation between the two countries, and one of the conditions is Indonesian workers, when they come, minimum wage must be at least $320 US per month. So with that, it doesn't make sense, cannot be the Indonesian come to Malaysia and $320 US per month, and Malaysia, the minimum wage, the regulatory is still much lower. So with that, there was a revision, revised the Malaysians' minimum pay, hike first, minimum pay at 320. Then from there, announcing the MOU, we're getting the Indonesians in at this price. But behind the scene, there was this condition that was imposed by our Indonesian counterparts. So sometimes, like what I said, minimum wage, the economics can take its place. But at the end of the day, it could be just political popularity, that election coming around the corner that takes place. So that's my answer to that.
Thank you very much. Very interesting. Nurain, Jana. China, India, and the United States together constitutes over 70% of global coal consumption for energy generation. These countries, driven by dirty energy, are also forecasted to be the world's largest economies over this decade. Is there really any economic argument for a realistic reduction of dirty energy production to meet the 1.5 Celsius target?
It's an interesting question because if you look on the face of it, the economic imperative is growth is driven by fossil fuels and dirty energy right now. But what we're borrowing from is the cost that we're going to pay in the future. So, for example, if I take a Pacific example, the Australian bushfires and how much it costs governments. The fact that the bushfires impacted New Zealand and all of the Pacific nations for months, almost a year, in terms of climate impact. There is high climate impact for small island developing states. There's high climate impact for small island developing states like the Maldives and a lot of the countries in the Pacific. So I think the question isn't whether there's an economic imperative right now, but the question is what are the costs that we're going to pay in the future if we don't go green, and if we continue to invest in fossil fuels and we hit 1.5 degrees Celsius. So at 1.5 degrees Celsius, if we take tourism as an industry and people coming to see our natural heritage and our natural environment, at 1.5, it's 70 to 80% of our coral reefs are going to die. At 2 degrees, that's 99% of coral reefs. So it's really about having a look at the environment that we're living in and looking at what is actually giving us the opportunities and saying this is not going to last if we continue to invest in dirty energy. Yeah.
Thank you.
Maybe I can.
Please.
I can add something. on this. I mean, I was in Washington a month ago, meeting World Bank and IMF, and we met also IFC, so which is International Finance Corporation. And maybe to come back to what the minister said during the first panel, I mean, there is a lot of money available, of course, for green project today. IFC has issued, I mean, we want to issue a lot of green bonds, what they call it, and this available to many countries. So I think it's a question also of finding the right project, and in energy, I mean, there's plenty of projects. I mean, in Europe, for example, I mean, we are now trying to develop the green hydrogen, which can be, of course, a very good alternative to the gas. I mean, you know, in Europe we are lacking energy, gas or oil, so we have to find something else. And I think for Maldives also, I mean, we have plenty of place to put wind energy or wind turbine, and I mean, we should try to look at it and, I mean, just not watch.
Philip and I have been speaking about this because I think through companies like B6, we would be able to, the Minister said that we don't know the know-how to approach these funds. So probably companies like B6 and the Belgium government maybe could support a country like Maldives. And I think,
yes, and I think at the national level or at the IFAPCA level as well. I mean, it's a question of course, having a project, of course, well defined.
Yes.
And,
so all Asia Pacific countries can benefit from this, right? So the presidents, please be ready, you know, to be working with Philip, right? Noreen?
If I can just add one more. So the philanthropic investment funder that I'm on the board of is over $1 billion fund. So there's lots of investors out there that are, so there's the UN bodies and the kind of international bodies, the international bodies and UN bodies that are looking at greening finance and green financing. But on the other side, there is also really high private interest into investment. So when we're looking at investment, it's really 85% of global investors are now looking at ESG, so environmental, social, and governance. Particular focus is really on the environment and whether there's two sides of it. That's greening finance, so looking at the finance and lending that exists and where it is going, and then on the other side, green financing and making sure that, as the previous panel was discussing, we're investing in green bonds and green investments such as sustainable projects. But it's not just environmental projects and environmental regeneration, it's also supply chains and looking at the social impact of it, because the collective ESG, actually, it's not just, you can't separate one or the other. So the collective ESG, doing good governance, making sure that modern slavery is addressed within supply chains, all of these give you cost savings, give you reputational impact, give you better consumers and better investment as well. So ESG is something that I think is burgeoning. And then on the private side, impact investment is even coming up from a microfinance perspective. So as Minister Aslam was earlier talking about public-private partnerships as well, the scale doesn't have to be massive. It can be really small as well, impact investment. We've done in New Zealand, set up a fund, $20 million, but doing microfinance investing into certain areas where the environment has been really impacted, and we're investing into regenerative environment projects where we're regenerating the local harbour, the Hauraki Gulf in New Zealand as well, investing in VR technologies that then educate so that the next generation can take this forward as well. So there's lots of opportunities. That's really about kind of getting the education on and knowing that there's a global investor imperative, like the ESG is here, and it needs to be really addressed in the Asia Pacific region. Thank you.
So the takeaway would be you would be willing to support any initiative by the Maldivian government or organizations in learning what you have been learning over the years, right?
Absolutely.
Thank you. Philip, before I go to Matthew and Radhakrishnan again, I told last night that I hear that Europe is going into recession very soon because of what is happening. The European Union is a very important partner to the Maldives tourism industry. I also represent an European country, you know, as the Consul General. It's worrying when Europe goes into recession. So you're coming from the real, you know, ground. You know, your foot is there. What are your thoughts How would Europe perform, and are you very concerned about? I know we all are concerned about peace and all that, but on the economic front, is it going to be very tough for the next year or so? Or?
I think, yes, Europe is going through, of course, some difficulties for the moment. Economic is not a smooth ride, of course, so there is always ups and downs. The major problem of Europe today is Germany. Germany was the engine of Europe, and Germany, unfortunately, let's say, put all its supply of gas into the hands of Russia, and then, of course, it's a big shock, which happened in less than 1 year. So again, the recession is there. We cannot hide it. We can see some companies closing. If I take B6, for example, we decided not to close the office during the weekend. So before Saturday, Sunday, Saturday was open for the people who wanted to work there, but today we close it. The bill of energy is too high, so we have to try to put some restriction. So of course, there will be layoff in the future. Activity will be reduced. Interest rate also went up. So we can see it also already on the real estate market. It's coming down. It's cooling down, I would say. How long it will take, I think nobody knows. But Europe economy also has always been not booming like India is booming today. Europe is more, let's say, a stable economy which is growing by 1 or 2%, going down by 1%. So I don't see, let's say, at the world level, a big impact of the European recession. There are some very strong economies who can take over, like
So all the
like
tourists
India.
from Europe would be traveling to the Maldives and the Asia-Pacific region, right?
I think tourists will still come, of course. And when I just
All
came,
right. All
the
right.
flights were full.
Thank you. Datuk Matthew, post-pandemic, Ukraine war, how is Malaysia performing? How is Malaysia performing?
I think Malaysia, I think not so much affecting us other than the fact that maybe some of us who have bought cars, there will be a delay. Because, for example, because part deliveries, the Ukraine definitely affect it, so car deliveries could be a bit slow. And for people who are actually doing projects, for example, in Russia, because you have monetary controls, free flow of money. I think there's an embargo on free flow of currency. For example, my company, we are doing the Malaysian embassy in Moscow. So now I have problem, I cannot remit money from Malaysia to Russia. So you have a lot of free flow of money that are stuck in Russia. So we have to find other means to remit money to Russia. So I think from the Malaysian angle, not so much an impact to us. More at the European side, cost of energy going up.
Thank you. Mr. Radhakrishnan, in your speech in Ahmedabad, Gujarat, you had serious concerns about the construction industry in India, the challenges faced by your colleagues, our colleagues there. What are your biggest problems in India right now facing the construction industry? Because we have similarities in all other countries. I think we have lessons to learn from you. So could you highlight, the challenges that you have in the construction industry in India and what you are doing about it so that we could all learn something from your experiences?
Sure, Mr. Jinnah. See, one of the worst affected countries because of this COVID situation is India. Especially 2020, from March to almost November, 10 months, almost the entire country came to a standstill. Laborers has thrown out of job, especially migrated laborers. They could not even go back to their native place. They had tough journey. And again, the second wave of COVID-19 during 21, starting from February. Of course, we could be able to recover because of the vaccine. And today, because the one country almost 90% of the people got vaccinated. Not even the developed country like United States has not done that, has not achieved that. And now, coming back to the question raised by you, what is the situation of the construction industry after this COVID-19? This is one of the industries which has been affected very badly. See, construction is a continuous process. If any break is there, it is very difficult to revive. But fortunately, the construction contractors, especially the infrastructure providers of our great nation, has recovered very fastly, and they have put back the situation in the proper rail, and now we started marching towards progress. And some of the problems we have requested the policy makers to redress the grievances, still not yet redressed. And we are expecting our dynamic leadership will be able to understand the problem of the infrastructure provider of the country, should be able to come to the rescue of construction contractors, especially the people who are involved themselves in the infrastructure. First of all, we have requested the government to settle the dispute, especially arbitration amount, which is pending for a long time. Now they have accepted to a certain extent to give bank guarantee and take away some 50 to 60% of the money. Again, our Builders Association of India playing the lead role in India. So we are, we are the vibrant association having 200 branches throughout length and breadth of the country with 1.5 lakhs membership strength. And we are the only association who represent both in central and various state government committees. So our plea is being heard by the policy makers, not only in Government of India, but various states. Even some of the GST problems, when we represented, immediately the Government of India and state governments are coming to our rescue and giving relief. So with this amount of encouragement, we anticipate from the government, I think in another, by 2023, the vibrant progress of the nation can be achieved by full involvement of our infrastructure providers. That is the situation of the construction industry after the COVID situation. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Nurain, you being a chartered accountant and looking into insolvencies, New Zealand was closed for a long period of time, more than any other country, I guess. Your Prime Minister believed in a closed country to keep people safe. And this also had raised many questions, but it saved a lot of lives. So for a country like New Zealand, lives, so more than economy, you want to protect everyone. For a country like Maldives, we couldn't have, I'm not saying lives are not important for us, but I think for us it was a do or die situation. So we opened the borders, and we are here right now in the Maldives. And so New Zealand got closed, and you opened very recently. How are the businesses doing? What's the economy like? I think it's a case that we would like to understand. How could we keep a country closed for so long, and how do you survive? Could you highlight a little bit on what New Zealand did so that we also get some takeaways from it? Thank you.
Sure. I'll start with quoting our Deputy Prime Minister, I was at the Labour Party conference just before I left. I was at the annual Labour Party conference just before I left, and the Deputy Prime Minister of New Zealand spoke, and he said,
I didn't introduce her at that time. She's also in the party of the Prime Minister. She leads the caucus. She's a politician. She leads the ethnicity
not a politician, but here to say.
Yeah, the diversity caucus of the New Zealand Labour Party.
Yes.
Yeah, thank you.
Just really actively involved and socially interested, I guess is how I would describe it. But we were at the annual party conference, and the Deputy Prime Minister was speaking to the challenges that we're now facing as Aotearoa New Zealand, as a nation, and it's similar. The pressures that we're facing is similar to the globe. It's, you know, economically, the pressures are very similar. But he said, and I quote this, not exactly word to word, but that doing the right thing, and we're willing to pay the price for doing the right thing, because next year is an election year and it's going to be a really close elections, but the government at the time was really interested in doing the right thing. So saving human lives was the right thing, despite the cost to the economy and despite a lot of public anti-sentiment. I don't know if people were following. There was a big protest at Parliament. They blocked it off. There was a fire. Yeah, it was quite a lot of disinformation and misinformation and protesting. But we were really focused on doing the right thing, and I think that was the right thing at the time. To give you an idea of where, at the moment, we're 7.2% inflation, so it's really high inflation. We've had a housing market bubble for a really long time, and partly it goes to what we were talking about, how we allow for foreign investment and how it's important to make sure that there is low red tape and low barriers to entry, but at the same time, it's important when you invite both investment and migration that your infrastructure holds up, and it hasn't been holding up. That's not necessarily the decisions of the current government. It's been subsequent governments on both sides of the fence that have underinvested in infrastructure and hasn't really planned ahead. So our infrastructure is under pressure by migration, under pressure by housing investment. Our housing stock quality is really low. There's not enough housing stock. So the housing market has been in a bubble, and then the last quarter we are now in a steep decline. So I think last month's figures was negative 11% decline in the housing market. What this means is that there are a lot of first home buyers, young people, who don't have resilience, so they borrowed from their parents to make their home deposit at these interest rates. What we're going into in the kind of near short to medium term future, we're looking at if interest rates, I believe, hit 7%, it is 50% of current homeowners will not be able to finance their mortgages. So we're heading into tough times. We also need to have that contractionary monetary policy because of inflation. So we'll see, but from an insolvency industry perspective, what we're seeing is not as bad. So we thought in 2020 we would see a lot of distressed companies falling over. We were really busy for that short, sharp period, so we were seeing foreign exchange hedging funds, those ones falling over, but that was because they weren't well managed. So I think a lesson for all the nations represented here today is that this is different from the GFC. The GFC was quick. There's a lot of, globally, governments have pumped funds into the economy, so it's going to be slow, it's going to be different, and we should be looking at really intentionally, as an economist put it, I forget where I read this, but this bubble has been historically created and it was pre-pandemic, so how do we let out the air a little bit slowly and have a soft landing for everyone involved?
Thank you. I will now try to wrap up because we have a board meeting at 1 o'clock. We also have lunch in between, so I will give 1 minute. The last, I will have a focused question with 1 minute for each panelist to answer. My question would be, what would be your thought for the Asia-Pacific economies in the next year or 2 years? What do you envisage, for our part of the region to be looking like in the next year or so? Philip?
I mean, as an external observer, I would say we have seen that Asia Pacific has been always more dynamic than, let's say, the old economy like Europe. So, and we can see today, I mean, a few countries are doing very well. I mean, I mentioned India, but Philippines as well, Vietnam. So there are many countries which are still doing quite well in Asia Pacific. I think it's, I mean,
Indonesia.
of course. Sorry, yeah, Indonesia as well, yeah. So I think there are many countries which will, I would say,
Bangladesh, doing all very well.
so these countries will bring the other economies which are a little bit more, let's say, difficult maybe to move with them. Some, of course, I mean, you mentioned Maldives. I mean, Maldives is a different model, of course. It's living on international tourism mainly. So, I mean, we have to remain optimistic. I mean, every time when there is a problem, let's say the human being finds solution, and I think it's
right?
adaptation or progress or technical solution. So we will find solution to this downturn. Yeah.
Thank you. Nurain?
I won't predict or forecast because I'm not an economist, but I will share some aspirations for what I hope to see in Asia Pacific and actually around the globe. So my observations during the pandemic as we locked down in New Zealand, but also I was hosting quite a lot of webinars and workshops globally. My observation was there was a lot of global connection. There was a spirit of, you know, we're all in this together because this is happening to us together. So I hope that sentiment will continue, that we collaborate both economically but socially as well. The other piece to this puzzle is we heard lots of stories around multiple cities. We saw this on social media and the news, the recovery of our natural environments as we slow down. Slowing down does not mean we don't progress, but what I've observed is that as we've picked back up and we start running again, we haven't kept the lessons of the pandemic. So I hope that we can look at how do we do regenerative economics, making sure that we protect our environments, that we keep in mind that climate change is here and it's going to impact us and it's going to cost us, and making sure that as we develop and progress, we keep those ESG imperatives in mind as well. And I suppose for the next IFOPCA convention, I would very much like to see much more women in the room. That's your challenge to you as well in your labour force. I know it's challenging, but there are ways to intervene and make sure that there are pathways for gender equity as well.
Thank you very much. Okay,
Mr. President, I think from the Asia Pacific point of view, I think I have to be optimistic. We have to be optimistic because things have already, to me, because of COVID, sometimes their own country's problem has really been rock bottom. So I have to be optimistic. In Malaysia, we're having our election on the 19th, followed by next day, we have Nepal's election on the 20th. So a lot of elections coming, and from there should be a lot of, if things are stable, there should be a lot of pump pumping of construction projects, which is what IFOPCA is about, construction projects. So I'm optimistic that Asia Pacific will be good. Even the stock market, recently when China said 5+3, we're now 5+3. I think the Hong Kong market went up by a couple of hundred million USD.
Billion, right?
Yeah. So I'm optimistic.
Yeah, carry on, Mr. Radhakrishnan.
It's very clear as we see the international arena, the Asia Pacific region is going to be trendsetter for the future economy of this world. Then there's no doubt about it. Because as already it has been forecast, the Indian economy, Indian GDP growth is going to be doubled by 2031. And along with other countries. And the Asia Pacific region is going to contribute for the entire world, the real growth. This is my answer for that. I need another 1 minute to tell about IFOPCA.
Please.
See, I am fortunate to have been awarded Bhishma Award by India Bhishma Award by IFOPCA board in the 40th convention held at Cochin. I am the only person who got that Bhishma Award. It is the proud moment for the IFOPCA family, I telling this. And again, one more information. The only Indian who has occupied Sika president post is Dr. T.N. Subbarao. You will know him. So he held the post for 3 years. It is another feather in the cap of IFAFCA, a IFAFCA man, IFAFCA country man, IFAFCA family man, who held the Confederation of International Contractors post for 3 consecutive years. So these two I wanted to share. Let us all hope our IFAFCA family joined together will create a lot of histories like that. Thank you very much once again, Mr. Jinnah, for giving me this wonderful opportunity and having shared some of the moments and some of the thoughts with this grand assembly session here. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Radhan. Thank you very much, all the panelists. I mean, it has been wonderful to have these deliberations, segment 1 and 2, honorable ministers, and all the panelists. Thank you very much. I mean, we can go on. We have so many questions, but we have limited time. So let us once again, give a big round of applause to all the panelists. And our Maldives National Association of Construction Industry will upload the recordings, the video recordings and the photographs on our website. We will also let you have this on available, the link, so that you can share with your colleagues. We will also try to show this on our national and other mainstream television. There are some mainstream media here as well, so you will see our deliberations everywhere. Once again, thank you very much. Let's do a quick photo session and go for lunch. And then, we have a beach party at 3 o'clock. So those of you who want to join the beach party, you are most welcome. It's some items are chargeable, but most of the session is free. So we also have a tug of war between Southeast Asia and South Asia. We have a tug of war between Southeast Asia and South Asia. I'll be captain on one side.